folks, fans, welcome once again to the Mask Fan Attic, the attic above Horror Hotel, where we look for cool, old, interesting Halloween masks. And tonight's mask comes to us from a company that is no longer around. That's right, I had to actually employ time travel to go back to the 1980s when there was still a company called Mr. Mask. Now, the long defunct Mr. Mask company used to have, back in the 80s, a whole line of decent quality products, nice latex masks and accessories. And nothing since, because they don't exist anymore. But tonight's mask from Mr. Mask is this guy, the Hooded Zombie. That's right, once again, that's Hooded Zombie. And the hood in question is a nice plush material, as you can see. Now, I've heard a lot of collectors dismiss Mr. Mask products as being all being rip-offs of Be Something Studios masks. And while it is true that Mr. Mask did have some masks that were clearly knockoffs of Be Something's designs and other people's designs, they also had some original characters, like this one. Now, Be Something Studios did have a beautiful hooded skull that was similar to this, but it was just a plain white skull. They didn't do a rotted skull like this guy, which, well, as you can see, he's a little more gory. He has kind of this nasty, peeling, cracking, dried, blood-stained, ugly, rotten skin on him. And now, Be Something, again, theirs was similar, but it was just white, and it didn't have the rot going on. So this is not the Be Something mask. This is Hooded Zombie. Now, Mr. Mask also had Hooded Skull, which was this same basic sculpture, only smoothed out. That one really looked a heck of a lot like the Be Something Hooded Skull. However, before you go dismissing Mr. Mask as being a rip-off company, let me point out, in addition to some cool sculptures, they did have some very clever innovations that they made. The major one of which would have been the addition of flashing lights in the eyes. Now, since then, a lot of other companies, Dawn Post and Rubies and Mask Illusions and whoever else you can think of, pretty much. Lots of companies have done that now, had masks with lights in the eyes. But it's still fairly uncommon, and it's still pretty dramatic and impressive because obviously most masks don't have lighted eyes. But back in the 80s, when Mr. Mask basically invented it, it was really amazing, and nobody else was doing anything like it. And I had a white hooded skull, black hood, white skull, from Mr. Mask that they actually custom made for me back in the day, because I wanted one with eyes that just stayed lit instead of flashing, because I thought flashing eyes that flashed at a steady rate would be more suggestive of a robot than you know, something mechanical, that is, rather than something organic like a ghost or a zombie that might have flickering eyes. I think their weirdest use of it was probably the flashing eye gorilla. They actually had gorilla masks, just a regular black, and it had red flashing. Anyway, one great thing about these masks was that they ran off of a 9-volt battery. And I'm going to turn the lights on. There's a little tiny switch, I don't know if you can see that, right on the side of the hood, on the inside, right up against the face. There's a little switch, and look at that action, kids. Wow, how cool is that, huh? Now, some of them tended to flash a little more slowly than this. This is a great one here because he's got a very speedy flash rate. I don't know what accounts for the difference. I only know that some of the ones I saw back in the day flashed a little slower. I like the fast flickering ones better. Anyway, the nice thing about the 9-volt batteries, and when I look for anything to use at Horror Hotel that runs off battery power, of course, I always look for things that use 9-volt batteries. Why? Because C batteries and D batteries weigh a ton, and sometimes they throw off the weight of your prop, and they're just too big and heavy, and you have to replace them a lot. And the same thing about with button cell batteries, those too, you have to replace them all the time, and you have to get in there and tear up your display to get back to where the batteries are. Nobody wants to do that. No. So if you use a 9-volt battery, you can use it with a device called a battery eliminator, which you stick onto the contacts of the battery terminals of the prop, or mask in this case, and then the other end can simply be plugged into a wall outlet, and then you're good for all night, and you don't have to fool around with you know, replacing batteries and any of that nonsense. You just turn him on and he's good to go. And we used this guy at Horror Hotel 3 or 4 years ago. I forget which year, but it looked really cool. He was in a window at the end of a hallway on a moving armature that was sort of hovering around, and in the darkness his spooky flickering eyes were lighting up all night. And I never had to take the window apart or anything, or mess with the batteries in him, because he was powered by one of the 9-volt battery eliminators. So it was plugged into a wall outlet, and he would just come on with the rest of that area of Horror Hotel. And I recommend, if you do haunted houses or haunted museum or anything like that that you happen to be haunting, I recommend you look for things that take 9-volt batteries so that you can use them with 9-volt battery eliminators and not have to actually mess with replacing batteries all the time. But great mask right here. Always like this guy. Kind of hard to find these days, but you might find one on eBay or someplace like that. And until next time, I don't want you to miss next week's segment, so I'm going to set the quantum lock accelerator here for exactly 1 week, so that I know you'll be here. Powering up. I'm going to set this. Perfect. I'm going to set this for 1 week so that you'll be time locked into coming back here in exactly 1 week to see next week's segment. So until then, we'll see you in the vortex of time here in the attic.